My two competitors today need no introduction, but I know you're already asking, well, how can you compare a Wrangler JL to a Colorado ZR2? Well, that's simple. We're not looking at cargo volume or passenger space. We only have one test today. It's that power line trail right there. Now, there's huge ruts up there. They're filled with water. We got a bit of rain coming down, making it even muddier. We're gonna run both of them up there. We'll see how they do, and then I will determine where your off-road dollar is better spent.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so first thing, right off the top, let's talk about the elephant in the room, this JL. Not because it's massive, because it's a Sahara model. This Wrangler that we have here, it's essentially the mall crawleriest of Wranglers. It has, all-season tires. It doesn't get the locking differentials. It doesn't get the disconnecting sway bars. This is not the model you're gonna buy to go off-road. So now you're saying, well, why the hell did you bring it to face off with a ZR2? Well, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. We only have a certain amount of vehicles to pull from. We can't always get what we want, so I take what I can get. And in this case, it was a Wrangler Sahara, so every time I'll take the wrong vehicle and make a video rather than make nothing at all. So if you're here to complain about that in the comments, you might as well just leave now. So why are we here then? Off the top, I said it. We're here to find out where your off-road dollar is better spent. If you're buying a vehicle just to go wheeling with, should you get a Wrangler or a ZR2? Well, as it sits, our Sahara model here, just over 43 grand, and as it sits, our ZR2, $44,000. So these things are really evenly matched. If you have in the low $40,000 range, if that's your budget, I'm gonna try to figure out which one of these two is gonna take you further and be more fun. So let's start off talking about this Wrangler, and first of all, we have to address the tires. So on this Sahara model, you can get optional all-terrains, but we don't even have those. We have Bridgestone Dueler HTs. These tires are essentially designed to be quiet on the highway and comfortable around town with just a little bit more grip than, a passenger car tire, and it really shows. So when we started off on that Powerline trail, I was optimistic that the Wrangler would make it further than it did. We got stuck in the very first hole that I crashed into. And you know what? It was all tires. So that's the great thing about this JL. It has so much clearance, 10 inches of ground clearance as it sits. I was crashing into everything. I was not worried about bottoming out. I didn't bottom out a single time. But when the going got thick, sadly, these tires just couldn't pull me up and out. So as you can see from the footage, we had a little bit of help from my Polaris Ranger, which kind of had to yank us out of there. And I managed to get this thing stuck 3 times on the way up and back. Now it's a bit of a moot point because of course you can get any kind of tire you want and put it on here. So let's talk about all the other stuff. So in this Sahara model, we have the Select Track 4-wheel drive, which allows me to put it into 4 auto, and essentially it'll sense the slip and then it'll kick into 4-wheel drive when you need it and run in 2-wheel drive when you don't. Now this probably goes without saying, I didn't have it in 4 auto at all today. We were in 4 low pretty much the whole time. Now the good thing with the Sahara is when you go for the Select Track, you do get the same transfer case, or at least the same low gear ratio transfer case as you do in the Rubicon. This is a 4-to-1 low range here. Like I said, exact same as the Ruby, and that felt really nice out there. And you have to mention the angles here. The Wrangler has a 41.8 approach angle, 36 degrees of departure. There was just nothing out here that I could find that even came close to kissing the underbody of this Wrangler. And as it sits here as a Sahara, we have no skid plates, but I didn't need them. Now under the hood of our Sahara model here, we have the 3.6 liter V6. And you know what? I drove the turbo when the JL launched, and I did like it quite a bit. But this 3.6 is definitely the engine to get in the Wrangler. It feels like it has lots of good low-end power. It's pretty revvy. It likes to rev up high, and it really likes to, deliver that power quickly. And as I mentioned, once you put it in low range, there's low-end torque for days. And now, honestly, one of my favorite things about the Wrangler is its maneuverability. You know what? You have this great high seating position. You can see down on the hood, and I'm looking down on the wheel flares. So you just get a really great sense for exactly where this vehicle is around you. And you just don't get that in the Colorado or really any pickup truck for that matter. And it's one of the things I really love about the Wrangler. Not to mention, it's actually quite maneuverable. It just turns really tight. There was more than one occasion where I made turns in the Wrangler that I just couldn't make in the ZR2. And it goes without saying, but off-road, being maneuverable, that's pretty important. So the one other piece of off-road gear you don't get with the Sahara model are any lockers. What you do get is a limited slip differential in the back, and it only works okay. You can see we ran through some off-camber ruts, and at the very end of them, you know, it was trying to send power to the wheel that was on the ground, but the wheel in the air is still just spinning, and the power just isn't getting there as, you know, securely or as confidently as if you have a locker. But once again, it wasn't lockers that slowed us down, it wasn't clearances or anything like that, it was just rubber. We had better rubber on this Wrangler, we would have been crawling right through that mud. So honestly, this Soccer Mom Special Wrangler, I was super impressed with how far it made it up that trail. I mean, it was buried in mud, and if it just had better rubber, we would have made it through no problem at all. But that's the point. Nothing else was slowing it down. It had the clearance, it had the power, it just didn't have the grip, and we almost made it to the end. I always like to say to my buddies that if you're not getting it stuck, you're not doing it right. So clearly today, we're doing it right. Now though, we have reached what is the deepest, swampiest part of this section, this trail, and I just don't feel confident enough with these tires to jump in there. So this is as far as the JL has made it. So we're gonna turn back around, go get the ZR2, run it up here, and see if we can't make it all the way to the end. Okay, so we got this ZR2 plenty muddy now as well, so let's talk about it. Now, once again, starting first are the tires. Here we have Wrangler Duratrax, that's what comes stock on a ZR2, and out there in the mud, they did really well. Even when this thing was really deep in the mud, the tires were always able to get a little bit of traction. And you know what, a couple of those holes, I was crawling along just inch by inch by inch. In every single case, the tires pulled me out. I did not get stuck a single time because of the tires. No, the only reason that this truck got stuck has to do with clearances. Now here in the ZR2, we have 8.9 inches of ground clearance at the rear axle, which is essentially at the rear diff, and that's exactly what got hung up. Now I managed to high side this thing, so you know, all four wheels were off the ground and I just sank down into the mud. So even though these tires are good, they just didn't even have a chance to do their job. So I did struggle with some rocks and some sticks to try to get this thing out, and it was not moving. So we had to call in the backup, which was the winch on our Yamaha ATV, and luckily that was enough, just enough to get us off of that big hump. And it isn't just ground clearance that's not great here on the ZR2. It has a 30-degree approach angle, which is pretty respectable, but the departure angle is 23.5 degrees, and that's all about that spare tire in the back. And once again, when we were stuck, that spare sitting just behind the diff was just digging into the mud and acting like an anchor, essentially sticking us there. So how about the other off-road gear on this Colorado? Well, we do have lockers front and rear. Now for the majority of that mud run, I only had the rear locked. When I got stuck, I locked up the front and hoped it would pull me out, but to no avail. But then we also have a proper 2-speed transfer case here. Now, unlike the Wrangler, this thing doesn't have a really aggressive crawl ratio. The low gear is 271:1, which results in about a 43:1 crawl ratio compared to the Wrangler's 80:1 crawl ratio. Yeah, it's just, this thing is not putting the same amount of torque to the ground as that Wrangler is when it's in low gear. So our Colorado here today has the 3.6 liter V6 with the 8-speed, and this is absolutely the engine to get with the ZR2. I've driven this truck with the diesel, and it's still fun, but you know, the diesel just kind of inhibits some of that fun. This gas engine, a lot like the Wranglers, is, you know, okay in terms of low-end torque, but it really loves to rev up. It revs freely, and it delivers that power when you want it. So there's certainly one place where this ZR2 really excels off-road, and that's when it comes to high speed. Once you pick your speed up, these Multimatic shocks are incredibly impressive. They keep everything really smooth and, you know, really tame when you're on the road. And then the second you get off-road, they just start swallowing up bumps and rocks. And, you know, you can run the Wrangler pretty quickly as well, but it starts to beat you up. This ZR2, I mean, on these little trails we have here, I still haven't found the limit. I'm hitting all kinds of stuff, and it just soaks it up and asks for more every time. So I know it's not a perfect apples to apples, but it has to be said, the Wrangler almost made it to the end of the power line. This ZR2 made it all the way. So here's the proof. The ZR2 made it through the deepest, boggiest parts of this trail. And what this really proves is that tires are everything, especially when you're in the mud and slick conditions like this. But that's not the full story here. So before we talk winners and losers, let me say this real quick. We had a successful day. We succeeded in finding the mud. We succeeded in getting stuck and unstuck with both vehicles, and then we succeeded at the most important part of off-roading, having a hell of a lot of fun. But let me talk you through these two competitors. The Chevy Colorado ZR2 is an excellent overall package, and it gets a lot of awesome off-road gear thrown at it, but some of its stock pickup truck roots are still shining through. On the flip side, this Jeep Wrangler JL is a purpose-built off-road machine, and it feels like it from behind the wheel. Now I know our tires let us down today, but we all know you could just get new rubber. So let me tell you that your off-road dollar is best spent on the 2018 Wrangler JL.